Hello, welcome to week 6. We are going to start with dysglycemia, the epidemic. And to be quite honest with everyone, it is probably the most important thing that you will look into most of the chronic problems that you see out there. So our problems with our body's ability to maintain proper blood sugar, be it hypo, hyper, insulin resistance, or what have you, is really linked to a lot of chronic problems out there. I mean, obviously, the lipid panels, diabetes, but also brain function. One of the things you'll see is a lot of people coming to you for brain fog. This is the #1 reason that you'll see. But we can also extrapolate this into heart disease, Alzheimer's, stroke, you name it. This is what is probably one of the most underlying stressors to our bodies, thereby creating a lot of the chronic problems that we see today. Remember the adage is a big piece to start with this. With dysglycemias, especially when someone's fatigued a lot, you'll see this. The most prevalent will be women, and add to that vegetarians. A lot of times their adrenals, thyroid, or blood sugar is trying to make up for the blood's inability to deliver oxygen to the cells, and that's where the true point of health is on a cellular level. So the endocrine system may be trying to make that up. Well, here we go with dysglycemia, detoxification, adrenals, GI function, essential fatty acids. So just remember that for most chronic problems. This is how the pancreatic aspect to this is. Its main function actually is digestive. It helps break down the remaining protein that the stomach cannot get to. It also alkalizes the stomach chyme, so as the stomach delivers the lower pH food content, the pancreas will release bicarbonate. So it'll alkaline the gut. So this will tell you that if you have low stomach pH, that's great, but as the stomach isn't producing enough acid, then there may be not enough trigger for the pancreas to deliver its enzymes. Thereby you're going to run into more of a digestive issue. But we're talking endocrine, so let's just move on. The endocrine function is about maybe, I believe it's just 2% of the pancreas, but they're such powerful hormones. They're in the islets of Langerhans. They drain into the hepatic vein, goes directly to the liver, so they go there. Now what's interesting is the cell's glucagon will go directly into the liver, and it'll move on from there. So that will not be a test question, just something to realize. So what this is showing you, this slide at the bottom left here, is the blood supply, how that works. Here is your duodenum, so the stomach will release its contents here, and the pancreas will release it into the duodenum to get things going. Now the endocrine cells are made up within the islet of Langerhans. You have your alpha cells, which secrete glucagon, your beta cells, which secrete insulin, and then your gamma cells, which secrete somatostatin. That's what that slide's showing. Okay, so here we're showing the actions of insulin against the actions of glucagon. These two hormones are released from the pancreas. So as you know, we have, as insulin's released, you have an increase in the entry of glucose into the body cells. It inhibits the glycogen breakdown in the liver and the muscles, so it keeps those guys from making glucose and dumping it into the bloodstream. It inhibits the lipid breakdown in the liver of adipose tissue. It increases the uptake of amino acids by cells and increases the rate of protein synthesis. So that's why you'll see there is some relationship with insulin and growth, and it's right there. The actions of insulin are very rapid. Its half-life is 10 to 25 minutes. Okay, with glucagon, which is going to be released from the pancreas as well, it binds to the liver cells and stimulates the breakdown of glycogen to glucose, because its job is to raise your blood sugar. The insulin's job is to lower the blood sugar. And what does that mean? If you can divide the body between the vascular and then the cellular, so the cellular aspects, the big mechanisms that make our body, are called parenchyma. Insulin's job is to take blood sugar out of the bloodstream and dump it into the cells. It's basically to lower the amount of glucose that's in the bloodstream. at any cost. And how does it do it? Well, it forces the cells to take in glucose. It causes glycogen in the liver and muscles. It keeps that from being broken down, so it's not those tissues aren't spilling more glucose into the bloodstream. And it inhibits the liver from breaking down adipose tissue. Okay, so this is where you get that non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is on the rise. It increases the amino acids, so your body no longer will use the amino acids to get to the pyruvate, to get to the acetyl-CoA, to go into the cells. It stops that. So insulin's job is really, if you think about it, is just to get blood sugar out of the bloodstream and force it out of it any means possible. And not only that, to make sure that there's none spilling in. Okay, so the second part is glucagon. Well, glucagon's job is to actually get more glucose into the bloodstream. So it'll basically do the opposite. So if you want to know the mechanisms of how these work, just remember one, and then just do the. Then if you want to just use that, remember the one. Then you just go, well, then the other guy will do the opposite to that. So that's how I remember most things. So glucagon binds the liver cells, stimulates the breakdown of glycogen into glucose, so it's going to create more glucose into the bloodstream. Increases lipid breakdown through the influence in the small, but its influence is small. So it's not as powerful as insulin's ability to drop blood, to lower the blood glucose level. And it stimulates the formation of glucose from amino acids. So its job is to make sure that there's glucose within the bloodstream. And then glucagon is very short-lived as this as well. So this graph here on the bottom right just shows you that these are the forces that are trying to basically maintain normal blood glucose. So if we could have just a glucose drip into our body at a perfect rate where we don't move, we lay in bed, we're really not going to have these guys shape or alter the blood glucose level. So as blood sugar increases, insulin will increase to bring down blood glucose. As blood glucose lowers, glucagon will raise it back up. And that's what this slide is, and it's showing you where the sweet spot is. So over here on the left, this is your insulin surges, which means that when you eat some carbohydrate or sugar and it hits the bloodstream, for millions of years, our bodies at that time were just going, we've never seen this before, because our ancestors generally didn't have so much access to easy carbohydrates. And how I'll define that, and it's not on the test, I'm just using this definition as a way to make this clearer. This is how I keep it in my mind, and it makes it very easy for me to process information, is these simple carbohydrates or sugars are things that when we eat will cross our digestive tracts very rapidly and increase our blood glucose levels so rapidly that our body is in some degrees not used to that from millions of years not having that access. So in 1800, the average American ate 10 pounds of sugar, and here we are at this time, and we're reaching about 200 pounds per individual eating sugar. Now, we probably, and this is probably if we look at the archaeological record, you probably have eaten enough glucose just by living at this time than your ancestors, maybe 20 generations of your ancestors. I know that's hard to get your head around, but just think at the time, there is no processing. We're not taking vegetables or sugar and we're extracting just the sugar out of it. As you eat sugar cane right off the stalk, you won't get a huge insulin release because it's bound up to fiber, and it also has vitamins and minerals within the stalk that helps your body process the sugar. So you're not relying on your reserves as much. The food that you eat that came directly unprocessed from Mother Earth has things that helps your body process it, so your endocrine system doesn't work as much. So what you're seeing at this time is insulin surges, which have never really been in our genetic record until the last 100 years with processed food. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because it isn't that we lived with this for millions of years. We're living within this for the last 150 years, and that's what we're seeing. So as an insulin surges, we eat a simple carbohydrate, basically something that had entered into the bloodstream. It's a disaccharide, at such a high rate that our body has to rely on insulin to lower that blood sugar, because too much glucose or too little glucose is a big problem. It increases your sympathetic nervous system. When that happens, when your insulin surges, it increases your blood pressure, because what's happening is going to tell the kidneys to hold on to sodium and potassium. Okay. Your triglycerides will increase because what's going to happen is insulin's going to try to take simple sugars and build it into triglycerides as a way to get that vacuum out of the bloodstream. It increases lipogenesis. lipogenesis. And so what happens is it's going to create more fat and more cholesterol as a way to convert that simple sugar into something more complex that's not going to irritate the blood lining. So it'll decrease the free fatty acids that are circulating in your blood. It'll lower your HDL, and what happens is it converts your HDL to your VLDL, very low density lipoproteins. And I wanted to look that up. So this enzyme right here is what converts that, and that enzyme is cholesterol ester transferase protein. So it increases that action, creates VLDL. So the density aspect, it relates to how much protein is related to how much cholesterol in that molecule. So a high density lipoprotein means you have higher protein ratio compared to the cholesterol. Very low means you have a lot of cholesterol, a higher amount of cholesterol to protein as a ratio. And what happens is this is the protein that's within these molecules, the APOA1 protein, that starts to get taken out. So it strips the protein out and create more of that. What's interesting, and we're going to talk about this a little bit further, and it's something that I didn't really learn until I took basically this class, is insulin surges will increase your testosterone if you're a female, and it'll increase, and what will happen is it'll increase in a male the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. I think last week I drew out the little AT walker, and so your body is pregnenolone, progesterone, it could come through DHEA, becomes testosterone, and the body converts testosterone to estrogen. So with these insulin surges, what happens is you're going to have men that are going to convert their testosterone to estrogen. And if they're female, it's going to increase their estrogen. It's going to increase their testosterone. So I find that very interesting. When insulin surges, it's also going to increase your overall cholesterol because it's going to increase your HMGO-KO reductase, and that's what statins work on, is to lower that aspect. Okay. So the statins are basically trying to make up for insulin surges, if you can see. So traditionally what we've learned is everything's cholesterol and fat, but now I think what's happening is we're going, well, it's not necessarily all the fat, it's how easy these simple sugars are getting in the bloodstream, and a lot of these medicament statins are not necessarily fighting a cholesterol problem, they're basically trying to make up for a bad diet, which is, and the specific aspect of the bad diet is simple sugars entering our body and simple carbohydrates. So what causes insulin resistance? I think we talked about this before. It's an excess carbohydrate diet. Low muscle use, sedentary lifestyle. Pretty easy. Elevated adipokines from excess adipose tissue. The next slide we're going to talk about that aspect a little bit more. And you have elevated cortisol. Okay. Now cortisol has roughly the same actions as glucagon. Its job is to raise the blood sugar. But specifically, cortisol is really better at elevating the blood sugar within the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. Glucagon doesn't do that overall. Cortisol also, and this is from further reading, will suppress the insulin reaction within the muscle cell. So it's a complete antagonist to insulin. So if you eat bad food, you're making a lot of insulin. Your cells eventually, we've talked about this, the cells will resist the insulin because they'll quit putting out as many receptors for insulin. Sugar stores as fat, because remember, insulin's job is to lower the blood sugar at any cost. So your body's going to put on more fat as a way to store it or to move it out of the bloodstream, which in sense makes you feel tired and hungry all the time, and then you eat more food. So this is the pattern that they're saying that feeds forward within each other. Here, the inducers of cortisol release is, mental and emotional stressors, tissue damage, inflammation, sympathetic overflow, and glycemic dysregulation. So with a Hans Selye classic pattern, you have the physical tissue damage, inflammation, you have the mental emotional, you have the chemical, which is your glycemic dysregulation. So sugar in some cases is a chemical stimulant, or for the adrenal glands. You have the sympathetic overflow, but then we also talked about changes in temperature as a way it affects the cortisol release. Here's your adipokines from and how they contribute to insulin resistance. We have gone through this slide before, but your normal abdominal fat cells are right here. Okay, macronutrient accumulation, carbohydrates mostly. As the fat accumulates, you're going to have more macrophage accumulation as well. And so what happens in essence, as a person develops more of a fat store in their bodies, what happens is it becomes in some degrees an endocrine-like organ. It becomes an organ that is contributing to the chemical dysregulation of the body. So with that said, what happens is when you have this is these cells come together and they start releasing interleukin-6, which is, you know, a cytokine that creates a frenzy in the immune system, increases tumor necrosis factor alpha, which directly goes into the DNA and makes the cells create more inflammatory products. But what also happens is you're going to have these types of hormones released. It increases your leptin, your resistin, adipopectin, and what happens is the resistin and the leptin will feed back into the interleukin-6 and increase the tumor necrosis factor. So you're just getting upregulation of inflammation. Leptin is what is the hormone that tells the hypothalamus, hey, I am satiated, I'm fine. Okay. With that said, these guys will feed into decreasing HDL, increasing LDL, increasing glucose. Okay. As glucose increases, one of the things that glucose is it can create a reacting oxidation species. So these two can fuel together pretty well. If you have a lot of glucose in your bloodstream, it is an irritant to the lining of your intima, and the intima is your inner lining of your blood vessels. But it also is an irritant to the central nervous system. So there has been a lot of people that with peripheral neuropathies that people can't get fixed. A lot of functional medicine doctors just basically look right to fixing blood sugar, dysglycemia, and having tremendous results. Now another thing to consider that really doesn't get widely talked about is the glucose that we eat. We're just talking about a molecule. Okay, so when you eat processed sugar that has been through a mill, or high fructose corn syrup, or these types of things, what's happening is nature, when we used to eat fruits or vegetables or any of these things, we'll just stick to fruit. So as you eat fruit, it has a combination of glucose and fructose. But what also is in a fruit is a lot of fiber. So that helps as we eat. That fiber kind of holds onto the blood sugar within the digestive tract. So you're not gaining such a glucose jump within the bloodstream. The other part too is it has fruit has a lot of vitamins and minerals in it that actually helps our body process this excess sugar that's coming into our system. So a lot of B vitamins, C vitamins, those types of things. When we eat processed sugar, it's devoid of all those things. And not only that, it's devoid of a lot of minerals. So the old docs used to say that if you eat it this way, what it will do is it'll displace the minerals in your body because it has already been stripped out of it. So as it enters into our bodies in an effort to process it, have to use the minerals and the vitamins within our system to plug it into the program so that we can process this glucose. So it creates, it strips our bodies of minerals and vitamins, and a term for that is negative nutrition. So creates a reactive oxygen species which will increase your LDL, which will increase your TLR activation, which are the receptors that create tumor necrosing factor. Okay, so when it gets to the liver, it increases your CRP, so your inflammatory products. So what's going to happen is this is just not a good thing to do. So with this accumulation, you're basically putting the body's under some stress. If we can get this lower, you're going to basically take a lot of stress out of your patient's diet, so that they're not trying to force their bodies through this particular process. Okay, so here's some questions to ask your patients. And what we're doing is we're dividing it between insulin resistance and hypoglycemia. All right, I had to pause, so I'm coming back. Left side's insulin resistance, the other side's hypoglycemia. So these are the questions you want to ask. And like the neurotransmitters we discussed before, this history taking and this, you can look at this as a questionnaire as well, really is a great way of using objectifying where you're going to go with the patient. So do you feel fatigued after meals is one of the biggest things you'll see with insulin resistance. Usually they feel this at lunch. Dinner, what you'll see is they crave sweets after dinner is like one of the biggest things. Like they eat a really big meal and they are just, I gotta have something sweet. And you'll see that as insulin resistance as well. Do you crave sweets during the day? Does eating sweets not relieve your sugar cravings? I've never actually had a, usually in my patient base they do. It does help. They eat some sugar, and it does relieve the cravings. So it's kind of rare that they say no. Must have sweets after meals is a big thing, because what's happening is they just ate a meal, and the insulin's being released, but their body is like, I need the blood sugar now. I need it now. And if they're eating proteins and vegetables and what have you, you're not going to get that immediate response. So the sweets are just a way of them getting to that sugar very rapidly. So as they eat anything like a dessert or suck on a candy or something like that, that's that immediate blood sugar rush, bypasses everything, goes right to the bloodstream, and that's what you're seeing. So that's what you see. Of course, you don't have to ask them this question. You can tell that. Do you have frequent urination? Now that is for sure blood sugar, but also that can be a few other things that we've talked about. Increased thirst after appetite. I've not seen a lot of that. Difficulty losing weight is one of the things that you'll see. But classically what you'll see is they have to have sweets before they go to bed, is huge. Hypoglycemic, crave sweets during the day. Pretty similar. You'll have an overlap here, but the irritability if meals are missed is a big thing. They get angry or upset, and they're like, oh, I don't know, I just eat something and I feel better. That is telling you there's a blood sugar problem. Even though that seems like, well, everybody's that way. No, these people notice it, and this is how they know, oh, if I don't eat, then I'm going to be a terrible boss, or I'm going to be a terrible parent. You'll see that. Depend on coffee to keep yourself going. It's a big piece. Get lightheaded if meals are missed. Eat relieves fatigue, feel shaky, jittery, or have tremors. This is if they're not eating. Blurred vision. So I am a classic hypoglycemic. I don't crave sweets during the day. I do get irritable if I miss my meals. I depend on coffee to keep me going for the morning, afternoon sometimes. I do get a little shaky and jittery if I don't eat. So I have a busy practice, so I have to make sure that I eat my 3, and then I'll have either some beef jerky or some vegetables that I can easily get into before in between patients, just so I can keep myself functioning at my highest level. Because if your blood sugar's solid, you can handle a lot of stress. If my blood sugar starts to dip, I get kind of slow, I slow down in my treatments, I kind of miss a few things. But if I can keep my blood sugar functioning, I have to, at this time, from my years of abuse before, basically eat to maintain my blood sugar at proper levels. Okay, this is the most common presentations that you will see. Is they tell me this, and then you'll see this. This is one of the things that you'll see with a lot of people, because nowadays people have to work much harder, the stresses of life at their job, is much tougher. There's more demands on them to make rapid decisions and many decisions during the day, and they just get to have some brain fog. This usually settles in the afternoons, usually after lunch. They usually have to eat something sweet or have some kind of coffee or something to get their brain back on. Okay, and then this is what you'll see on the right. This is your typical blood labs. So we have the high triglycerides, low HDL, high LDL, high total cholesterol, increase in insulin, increase in glucose, and increase in your hemoglobin A1C, your glycosated red blood cells. So this is a great slide. I definitely would have this copy and paste it because it's just such a real clear, straightforward presentation on how you can help with this problem. Okay, this is what patients will, have gone to their conventional medicine doctors and nobody's touching this. And this is probably, once again, guys, this is so important for your patients. This is what's happening. It's a blood sugar problem, and if you really want to know it, you really ask those questions and then just look at the lab values. Okay. It's not shutting down their body's ability to make cholesterol that you need to look at. You got to figure out what is causing that body to have these panels on the right, and also why to have these symptoms on the left. Don't get lulled into, well, everybody's that way. It's because everyone around you has a blood sugar problem. If you can teach people how to eat and to take care of themselves, you will see them feel better, where they come into your room and they go, I can't believe how good I feel. I'm sleeping better. I'm feeling better. My emotions are better. Their quality of life gets better when that blood sugar is being maintained. So I can't stress it enough. So with that said, we look at this medically. Well, here's what happens when they go to classically trained United States medical doctor. Not to say that these guys are doing anything bad. It's just the way things are done. So when a patient is in between this zone right here, they go, well, there's nothing wrong with you. We'll wait and see in 3 months. What they're doing is they can't do anything until it shows up at 127 because, well, that's how they practice. That's how the protocols for them to do their job are. And that's when you would want to bring in a med, because a med will have a dramatic change in symptoms, because that's what meds do. They make the symptoms go away or make the numbers look different on paper. So a lot of times we're shifted now medically into basically treating the numbers on the page. And part of that is training. The other part is you got to look at, being sued. Medical doctors have to, every doctor has a lot of pressure to do the right thing. And so if it doesn't show up on a lab, then they can't fix it because there's nothing wrong within their paradigm. So this is what you see, and I've seen this with my patients over time, is, yeah, everything's fine, it's high. And I go, well, what's going to happen is you keep going back until you go to this number. They may say lose weight, but they don't tell a patient how, and they have no idea how. They don't, generally, most medical doctors don't believe that, diet can have any change on that whatsoever. Or chiropractors in that sense too. But if you're a functional medicine doc, you're like, wait a minute, we're heading into this zone here. There is a lot we can do to bring this back, because if you continue living the life that you're living, you're going to be a diabetic patient. You're going to be diagnosed with diabetes. They're going to give you meds that help you manage it, and you're eventually, because of it, your blood sugar is not maintained as well as it should. You're going to run into more complications later in your life. So that's when you want to bring in diet, exercise, nutritional supplementation. It's huge. And if you can get people eating right, you will see great changes in those labs. You will be amazed. You will be amazed how resilient the human body is when it gets what it needs to fix itself. Not all the time, but you will clear a lot of things. So here we're talking about hemoglobin A1C. This is the glycated hemoglobin. What's great about this is just giving you a more of a chronicity type of thing. How deep into this blood sugar issue are they? So these levels basically measure how blood glucose is functioning with the last 2-3 months of their life. So what happens is glucose will bind to the hemoglobin, forming these glucose hemoglobin molecules, which remain in there for the life of the blood cell. The life of the blood cell is about 120 days. Okay, so these percentages here are just saying in a non-diabetic patient, you'll see that these levels would be 4% to 6%. Pre-diabetic, which means they're starting into that red zone, is 5.7 to 6.5, and most people that have been diagnosed with diabetes will have it at 6.5 and higher. So what is important about this? Well, I've already mentioned it shows you the depth or how long they have been in a glucose high diet, but it also is a great measure for your patients to check. So as you're working with a patient, you're getting their diet right and you're doing the supplements, you can run this test 3 months later. And when those numbers drop, you will see it directly related to them losing weight, feeling better, and those types of things. The other part is patients love labs. So you know, as a patient comes into your office, you say you got a blood sugar problem. They're like, well, I don't have diabetes. What are you talking about? What can you do to show them that there's a problem? Now, in my office, a lot of these people have already had this checked through their physician. So I say, bring your labs in and let's take a look. And I go, okay, as we're working with you, you still keep on the same meds. Let's fix your diet. Let's see what we can do to get your body functioning much better, and then go back and get the labs. And when they see that this hemoglobin A1C drops, then they are like, they believe you finally. So it's a great practice management tool in the sense of it keeps the patient in that relationship, because they're going to work hard because they know that when I look at this number, I'll know if this is working or not. So it really helps with compliance. So this chart here is they've done a lot of testing and looking into, and they've seen there's a correlation between the hemoglobin A1C and then the serum glucose levels. So your serum glucose levels just measure your blood sugar at that time, where when you do this measure, what you're doing is you're looking at you know, how are they doing overall? How is the body functioning with the glucose in their diet? And there has been some correlation. So when people are at a 4.0 to 4.9, when they do a blood serum glucose, it usually is in this range. So there is some correlation with the HbA1c or the hemoglobin A1c. My blood sugar is low. Should eat something. Or and it correlates with the serum glucose. So here's where you want the optimal. So as they break it down, so when you're working with people in optimal, and that's another concept in functional medicine, we're not trying to get you out of a disease, which is diabetic. We're going to get your body functioning even better. So it's not just, well, you're not showing any kind of markers for disease. There's nothing wrong with you. We want people to function better. We want their body to respond to stresses easier, and when that happens, they're healthier. And healthy bodies generally do not get any problems. Okay. So this is really good. So this just shows you where you want your patients to be optimal. If you get a patient in this zone, generally they don't know why they're seeing you anymore because they feel great. So here are some interesting things on brain changes. Actually, Dr. Hurto put this, a lot of the slides I'm using are, to be quite honest, are Dr. Hurto's only because I really thought he did a great job with this. But he said that he used this to help motivate his patients to get off of sugar. And everybody's always concerned about their heart and their brain. So it's not a scare tactic. It's just saying, hey, you know, this sugar that you're eating is affecting your brain, and you know, you don't want to have any kind of brain damage as you get older. And people tend to listen to you. So this slide right here is showing, as this is brain size shrinking right here, percentage of annual brain loss. Okay, so as hemoglobin A1C increases, you see more of an increase in the shrinkage of the brain. So here we are in optimal levels somewhat. We're above that 4.0, right? You're destroying brain tissue, because even though the brain needs glucose, it's still toxic to the brain if it's too high. And that's what this slide shows. And then right here it's just showing exercise. If you do aerobic exercise, you see the size of the hippocampus increase with exercise. And here they are just stretching. You see a decrease where they're not exercising. Right here. Now remember, we talked about the neurotransmitters, and it's interesting. Neurotransmitters help our body process information, helps us with our moods and our emotions and all these different things. It kind of creates a theme within the brain, but all those neurotransmitters that we learn have a lot to do with muscle function. Your GABA, your acetylcholine, your serotonin in the small intestine, they are primed for motion. So our bodies are designed for motion. And as we move and groove and improve, it's affecting brain function. So any kind of exercise is good. The short burst intense exercises seems to help. So when someone's on a very busy schedule, you can do CrossFit. So you're going to kill yourself in the shortest amount of time. But as you know, some people can't handle that, so I just let them go. Do whatever exercise you can. Walking, riding your bike. Find something that not only just something that you enjoy or where your level is. If you're walking 30 minutes a day, just walking, don't consider it I walk up and down the stairs at my office. Just walking, you're doing yourself a tremendous amount of help. And so just getting people out and exercising every day or some days, or just getting them to move in any way is going to help. So this is showing you how these things affect the brain. Okay, and here's your lab analysis. So this slide right here is your adrenal stress index, right? And so they're using salivary insulin to see. So if you have a patient who, because of money, or maybe you feel really confident just moving on an ASI, there's docs that can really read these very well. You can do a fasting insulin and a non-fasting insulin. And if this is, here you are fasting and you're at a 41, you're insulin resistant. You have so much insulin in your bloodstream and you haven't even eaten yet. And your normal is in this zone. And here you are non-fasting. So you can generally, 99% of this is just what they ate. So, and then your blood chemistry fasting, you want to see, if you don't want to see this is a danger zone. You don't want to see the glucose over 100. You don't want to see the HbA1c over 5.7. You don't want to see the insulin above 10. So, right there. So this is a different range, but this is what you want. You don't want to see triglycerides over 130. You want to see HDLs above 40 if they're male, and above 50 if they're female. And in this ratio, you want this ratio here. But you can also see uric acid elevated, cholesterol elevated, and LDL elevated. So when you see any of this, you just really want to get this patient's diet correct, and supplement depending on what you feel more comfortable with, or both. Okay. So here is when you need to start making some change. This patient needs to make changes when you're seeing this here. So in this slide, we're looking at bad. You want everything in a healthy, patient below that. In a hypoglycemic, you're going to see glucose is decreased, so you're below 80, and then your LDH decrease. So this is a enzyme. This is a lactose dehydrogenase enzyme, and if it's low, then lower than that, then what's happening is you got a hypoglycemic patient. So to be quite honest, you're going to be treating these roughly the same. Diet is really important, and supplementation will roughly be the same to do it, depending on the patient, depending on the circumstances. With a hypoglycemic patient, you're generally going to have to teach them they got to eat every 2 hours. So one of the ways that I do that is I just tell them, hey, you have to eat breakfast. It's the most important meal. Some of them can't do anything other than I just have to get them eating breakfast. And you got to get them eating protein, so meats or eggs with any vegetable other than a rice and potato with those 3 square meals, and then they need to have some snacks with them to eat. Now, most of these people are very busy, so I say, you're going to have to prep. You may have to do a Sunday where you buy your groceries and you prep for the week. And I tell them, look, when you leave your house, you're basically on a camping trip, and you need to bring your resources with you, because that world out there is not going to support a really healthy blood sugar. You have to take your food in. So I say cut some fruit. You can eat that between your meals and just eat as much as you can. So have it with you ready to go. So you can be at your desk working really hard. You set a timer on your watch. Boom, it's been 2 hours. I don't care if you're hungry or not. Put a couple pieces of fruit in your mouth, chew it up, and go at it. And I don't give them any huge protocols other than just doing that. And what I'm trying to do is go, look, I want to have you eat this way for a week. And then you can come back and tell me if it's not working or not. But generally, you have the patient. That's usually going to help them and fix them. This right here is a really good model with, this is the highway to diabetes. You got the hypoglycemia, become insulin resistant, and then you have diabetes. You don't want any of these, okay? You don't want to live your life here. You don't want to live your life here. I'm working on getting this better for myself. And this is the road, because the thing is that in your head you get this, you're going to have a master's, some of you are doctors and you understand this, but if you can't communicate this to your patients, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you're not going to get them better until they understand the process. So Dr. Hurto says that he uses this poster. I use something different, but he uses this. I might use this because I think this is great for practice management. You're on the same road. There's no difference between the diabetes, insulin resistance, the hypo. It doesn't matter what the name is. You're on the same road to destruction or a complication in your health and your life. It's basically, you're all on the same highway. So this is a very good slide, just breaking down the path as well as this. So you have a genetic and acquired condition. Example of acquired conditions is obesity, sedentary lifestyle, nutritional deficiencies, increased free fatty acids, epigenetics. Yes, I know, well, my brother and my sister have it, and so I have diabetes, that's all I have. And I go, if we took your brother and sister out of this American life and put them in a different country, they probably wouldn't have diabetes. So that's a hurdle for most patients. They think, oh, that's what I have and that's what I got. And I go, you have to slowly go, no, it's your genes under a tremendous amount of stress. Okay, then you become insulin resistant, so your body says, I can't respond anymore. So you want your optimum ranges of serum fasting insulin is below 5 or 10. So everybody has an opinion on this. Okay, so pick what works for you. Compensated insulin resistance, normal glucose tolerance, impaired optimal fasting glucose is now you're starting to get above 95. We're starting to reach into the danger zone. Impaired glucose tolerance, your 2-hour glucose levels are now at between 140 and 199. Impaired fasting glucose is now you're at you want it at 100 or less. I would like it below 90 myself. Pick which battle you want. Pancreatic beta cell. So this is the pathway. This is how it all starts. This is the path, the train. So if you can understand this piece, this highway aspect, and draw it out for your patients. You go, hey, this is where you are on this path. We need to get you above this here. Or, hey, this is where you are right now. If we make a couple changes in your diet, we can keep you from this danger zone here. This helps them know where they are. So if you can communicate to your patients where they are and where they're headed, and it helps you as a physician because you have to know yourself, like where are they headed, how deep is this problem, and if you can communicate that very well, you're going to get better compliance, and better compliance means the patients get better, because the only way they're going to get better is if they make the changes themselves, and if you can't convince them of it, I mean, even though it's not your job, you just have to get better at it. Okay, and so now let's just talk about the net results. What is it all about? If we take it all the way down to ATP, so we have macronutrients, which are your proteins, fats, and carbs. They enter into the body, okay? And so the proteins and fats, look at this, they go right into the aerobic energy system, right? The carbs can go into the aerobic, but they do anaerobic as well, okay? So when you need this with oxygen coming in, you get aerobic. As you get aerobic, what do? You create CO2, H2O, and you blow out CO2, H2O, and you get lactic acid. But the lactic acid is not coming from the aerobic, it's coming from the anaerobic. Okay, so you have an anaerobic energy system, and you get the ATP pool, and then you get your ATP put out, and then the phosphagen energy system is another one. But here we basically want to talk about these two right here. Okay, so here we go all the way down to the Krebs cycle. Well, you have 3 ways of getting here. You got fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. These are your macronutrients. That's French. So proteins, it breaks down amino acids. There's deaminization, and you get pyruvate. But you can also get pyruvate from carbohydrates, glucose, glycolysis, and there you are, pyruvate. So proteins are a good way of getting that pyruvate. Okay, and it feeds in, and you have that conversion to acetyl-CoA. Well, now if you do fats, fatty acids, beta oxidation, you get acetyl-CoA too. So what you're seeing right now in this part of the world at this time in human history is we're the American is living off of these carbohydrates, which the amount of carbohydrates that we eat in a day is nowhere near what we were eating thousands of years ago. So I would behoove you guys to measure out 193 feet in front of your street. If you have space in your office, do that. Every inch of that walk is 1,000 years of human evolution. As you walk down that long 193 feet, just think every inch you walk is 1,000 years, and do this. This just gives you a tremendous perspective. You get to the last 10 inches, that's when farming started. So we went from hunter and gathering to planting our food. And that didn't happen to that last 10 inches of that journey you just walked. But it doesn't hit Europe till 5,000 years later. So now, if you're of European descent, your ancestors didn't do any kind of farming till 5,000 years past Tigris Euphrates. So it tells you how smart Europe is. So you're down to the last 5 inches of that journey where we started planting food. We weren't eating what the earth was putting out. We weren't hunting. We weren't gathering. We were still doing that, but we were starting to change our environment with farming. So our digestive tracts, our endocrine system is really based on more of a hunter and gathering as we look at history. Okay, what you're seeing now is a bunch of people around you trying to adapt to a carbohydrate diet and high stress. So right here. So if you can get these carbs decreased here, increase your proteins and your fats, you're going to basically feed this energy cycle. Now, the thing is this, the endocrine system's there to help when your body can't adapt as rapidly as possible. If you can get every cell of that patient's body and yourself healthy, happy, burning energy clean, you're going to have a healthy body, because the health of your body is based on how healthy your cells are. And it goes, as you know, through the program, as you get a healthy mitochondrial aspect going here, you're going to have healthy cells. Healthy cells don't require too much work. Okay, creates the electron, through the aerobic, you go to the ETC, which creates your ATP. Okay, so let's just look at the net results. You take glucose as energy, so your net ATP summary from the breakdown of one molecule of glucose is this. This is what you're seeing. Okay, glycolysis. So here's how you do it if it's anaerobic. This is what you get if it's aerobic. And you get 32 right here, 32 ATP and 234 kilocalories. So one molecule glucose, glycolysis, pyruvate, acetyl-CoA, citric acid cycle. This is what you get. And going through the ETC right here, 32. Now, if you change that to fat, where you have a triglyceride, right? And triglycerides are 3 fatty acid chains connect to a phosphate head. If you remember that back in the day, that's great. It's showing you the chemical properties right here. So with one molecule of fat, you get 140, or we're saying with glucose, you get 147. So here we go. We got glycolysis, pyruvate, beta oxidation, and citric acid cycle. You get 147. Right here, you get 32. You get 234 kilocalories. You get 234 kilocalories here. But remember, there's 3 fatty acid chains all day, so you times that by 3. It shows you that you get more energy from eating fat than you do from eating glucose. But what you're seeing out there is people, their blood sugar is so temperamental and been so triaged with the insulin and the cortisol that as you try to get that sugar out of their diet, they're going to be craving it. They're going to be cursing your name. But if they can hold fast and get through that little crisis, their body will start to function better, where it's not so temperamental with glucose. So fat is where the energy is, but it takes a little bit of time for your body to get to that. When you eat, the simple sugars and the carbs, they're getting it immediately, and they're basically at the edge of their blood sugar. They eat that stuff, and then 20 minutes later they got to eat it again. It's very temperamental. You put some fat in there, it's going to take a little while for that to kickstart, but it lasts longer. They get more energy, and they're not blowing themselves out every 20 minutes where they have to eat. So fat is better. Okay, so what do you do? What's the big metabolic mastery of the protocol? it's good to start with a protocol, but eventually as you're in practice, you're going to change it because things change. So it's always good to start somewhere. So, just eat meat and fish and eggs, okay? I suggest eat protein breakfast, lunch, and dinner with any vegetable other than rice and potato with a meal. Stone fruits, stone or pit, these include plums, cherries, peaches, nectarines. So I say eat fruits between meals. That just helps get that blood sugar. And this is going to spike the blood sugar up a little more rapidly, but it's not going to last as long, but that'll get them to the next meal, especially if they're hypoglycemic. Nuts are a really good form of protein. A lot of my patients will eat that. Yeah, you definitely want to minimize roasted or highly salted nuts. Now, probably you'll get a bunch of questions on this, but I just have my patients, if they're nut fiends, to buy them raw, put it in water. You might have had this through the program already. There was some chef, I forget the name of the class, but you want to ferment your nuts. You want to basically soak them in water overnight, pour the water out, and it will unlock a lot of the nutrition in the nuts and seeds. It's called fermentation. A lot of nuts and seeds have phytic acid, so do grains in general. Phytic acid usually draws minerals to it, so these things will deplete a patient of the minerals. And what's happening is if you eat a nut or seed, it's designed to hit the earth and to soak in nutrients, not give it away. But if you take the phytic acid out, if a nut and seed is moist, then it starts to release a lot of its nutrition. So I say if you're going to do nuts and seeds, you're going to eat a lot of them. You want to ferment them. Vegetables, any vegetables, good. Spices, cinnamon, as you know, has a lot of chromium in it, so if they're going to eat something sweet, throw some cinnamon on it. Olive oils, fats are all great to use, and butter as well. You can work that. No, supplements, chromium picolinate helps with a lot. I like this protocol because it allows some grace here. So you have a patient who has, insulin resistance, and you have them eat a meal, and then have them take a chromium picolinate with their meal, and then see if they get sleepy after the meal. And if they don't, great. But then say they eat a meal and they go, yeah, I'm still sleepy. Okay, well, add 2, add 3, add 4, add 5 till you can. I usually go up. I would be more comfortable at 5. See, when do they start not getting sleepy after meals? Because what chromium does is if on the cellular level at the membrane, if you have low chromium, then blood sugar doesn't enter the cell as easy. So your body then goes, well, the blood sugar's still up. I have to release more insulin and really force it into the cell. So vitamin D as well helps make the blood sugar sensitive. The fish oils are great. It may take a while before this particular one will set, but as you know, the fish oils can be used as a fuel, but it can also make the membrane of your cells more flexible, thereby making it easier for receptors to go. So is really, really important. So but get the diet right. It's really important. And then this is a really good thing to do. I've had countless patients reduce or quit insulin, diabetes drugs, and completely rid themselves of this condition as 4 to 6 weeks. Many ask me how long they have to eat healthy like this. And this is the thing you'll see. As they start to feel better, they go, well, how long do I have to eat this way? My answer is only as long as you want your brain to function well. The choice is yours. And you'll have that conversation. As you get a patient healthier and they're feeling good, they think, oh, well, okay, now I'm better. I can eat the way I want. And that is what's going to happen is, yeah, I'll see you next year with the same problem. I have, this was a quote from Dr. Hurdo, but I have, being a simple little chiropractor, I've gotten people off of their diabetes medications with a little bit of supplements, but mostly just having them change the way they eat, gotten them off statins, you name it. Just by changing their diet, as simple as that. So, and that's one of the things you'll see is, well, how long do I have to do this? And I go, well, how long do you want to be healthy? How many workouts is it? You go, well, I've had my 1,000th workout. I don't need any more. I can maintain my body this way because I've had a set amount. It's you have to eat this way to be a healthy, happy human being. There's no way around it. So I appreciate your time and energy and fortitude as you deal with this. And I hope you have a great day, and keep up the good work. And as long as you're learning, you'll be making mistakes, and why worry your mind when you give it your best?